number of thefts. So in September there were 46, in October there were 79. But again, you think this would be, these are made up stories, but when I went through a lot of those thefts, a lot of them were parcel delivered to the front of the house, left at the front door, parcel gets stolen. So people are getting things delivered, front of the house, not secure, left there all afternoon, someone walks past, thinks, oh, I'll have that, and it gets stolen. The other thing that is occurring a lot of still is theft out of a vehicle that's parked on the street that's not secure. And people are stealing, and a lot of the time it's kids, and I've talked to you before about this. They'll steal change out of the centre console, but if you've also left your Ray-Bans in there, or your laptop, or your phone or whatever, they'll also take that. If you're going to leave your laptop in the car, or your iPad or whatever, you're better off leaving it on the roof of the car with a sign saying, please come and take my iPad or laptop, and it makes it easier for them. Really, you should be taking them inside and securing them, or even just throwing them in the boot so they're out of sight and then out of mind. Overall, within our patrol area, which is sort of bordered by all the highways, as you know, our members attended just over 700 jobs both months, and have been quite busy. One of the things that Peter and the council asked me to also talk about was the introduction of the cannabis legislation into the ACT, effective at the end of January next year. And I'm quite happy to take questions and field any sort of queries that you've got in relation to that. The legislation itself is something that's brought by the government, and it was passed. And it's best to refer to the ACT government in relation to the exact nuances of what that legislation is. Effectively, though, in simple terms, it allows for private use of cannabis in your own home. You're allowed to have 2 plants per person, with a 4 plant per household maximum, for your own personal use. So that does not mean you can share that cannabis with anyone else, because if you do that, you commit an offence of supply a prohibited substance, and there can't be any money involved. Not only can you not purchase seeds to grow a plant, you can't supply a plant to someone else, or someone else can't supply a plant to you where there's any sort of exchange of money. They're the sort of things that we take fairly seriously, the supply of illicit substances. We do have a harm minimisation policy with the rest of the ACT government to reduce the harm that illicit substances causes. So we're not out looking for the end user. We're actually out looking for the people who are supplying those. And these are laws that, although they in some ways conflict with the Commonwealth laws, as part of ACT policing, we're going to work with the ACT government to make those laws work as effectively as we can. Our police officers have a discretionary power to take action where they see fit in all the circumstances, and they make those decisions every day. They make decisions about whether they're going to arrest someone, whether they're going to use force on someone, whether they're going to further investigate a matter, or whether they're not. And it's probably one of the most important powers that our members have, and that the police have in this country and every other similar governed country, that we allow that part of the justice and the Westminster system to determine what the best course of action is from there. The courts will determine, if we decide to prosecute, the courts will determine what happens to a person and what, if at all, there's any penalty involved. But the cannabis laws, or cannabis itself, still remains an illegal substance under the Commonwealth legislation, which we also have to work to, in the same way that every other police in any other state or territory in Australia have to enforce Commonwealth law as well as the state law. So if our members determine that it is appropriate that we charge someone under those Commonwealth offences, then that's what they'll do. And it really will depend on the circumstances at the time, in exactly the same way that they make decisions like that every day now. So we don't actually see too much changing in terms of the way we actually go about our job. It's not the first piece of legislation that is a little complex, and it's not going to be the last, and we're just going to work our way through it as best we can. Was there any questions about the cannabis legislation or our role in that at all?
What consultation was there with basically policing when the legislation was being drafted?
A lot of consultation, and we made public submissions like everybody else in relation to what our position was. We were opposed to it on a number of grounds. Not only the enforcement side of it, because well, really, as far as I'm concerned, whatever the law that the government enacts are the ones that we're going to that we're obviously going to enforce. It was more around the side effects of cannabis use in the broader community, and what impacts we see that having on law and order and the safety of the community. So yes, we were heavily involved, and we opposed the introduction of it.
Just, right, if you either repeat the question, just so that we don't have a microphone we can throw.
Right.
Just with regards to the hierarchy of basically policing, you've got two governments. So we've read in papers about the federal government, not liking the ACT government laws. Who takes precedent? You see you're listening to the ACT government, but then you've got the federal Attorney General saying you've got to do something else.
Well, nothing has changed in relation to the powers of a constable to take action or not. So, and this may sound strange, but I don't have the command authority to tell one of my constables to arrest somebody or take a certain course of action. And that's how that's enshrined in our oath of office and the legislation that give us our police powers. So regardless of what government is in power, both locally and federally, our role is to enforce the law without fear or favour and without that political interference. So regardless of which government it is or who's telling us, our members will do what they think is the most appropriate course of action. It's my job and our executive's role to provide a little bit of guidance for them about what we expect and what we're trying to achieve and what the ACT government is trying to achieve from this legislation. Our firm view is that harm minimisation and reducing the risk to the end user is the most important priority, that protecting the people of Canberra is the highest priority. And if that means we decide not to take action because of all the circumstances, that's what our members are going to do. If they decide to prosecute under the Commonwealth legislation, that's what we're going to do. And I know that as far as I'm concerned, if it was me taking the action, I know that the Chief Police Officer and the Commissioner will fully support me in whatever decision I or my members make. Sorry.
Any other questions? There was one here. No? Yeah. Just here?
Mine's going back to the burglaries and car thefts.
Yep.
What percentage, if you've got the knowledge in your head, about apartment or strata units compared to freestanding homes?
All right, so the question was around the percentage between strata units, freestanding homes. I can't give you the exact figure, but I can tell you, and I didn't mention it during the burglaries, but another large percentage of burglaries and thefts relate to undercroft dwellings. So where people have got, they live in apartments and they've got a lot of their property secured in underground car parks and in storage cages. That's quite common. and some of that is caused by people who tailgate into apartment complexes if they have swipe access, or not allowing the gate to close when you go into a car park, and then people are allowed to then just walk in. I can't give you the exact figure, but there is I would say a higher than the normal percentage in Gungahlin because of the large number of apartments and that here compared to the rest of Canberra, but it's not unusual. Yeah.
As a follow-up to that, you say in the underground car parks. You say about the underground car parks.
Yep.
Are many of those have security cameras, or do you not know whether they've got security cameras and they still break into them?
Yes. Yeah, they do. And a security camera has never stopped somebody stealing property. It's never stopped someone breaking into a house, and it is at times it can be a good deterrent. At times it can be a useful tool for us in terms of the investigation. But the CCTV footage needs to be of a quality that's accepted by the court and can clearly identify somebody. And unfortunately, some of the positioning of them, the quality of the CCTV, the angle that they're set at, and the footage that they actually provide is not sufficient. As I said, a camera has never stopped a car or a house getting broken into. It's a good deterrent, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
My apartment got broken into, so when we get the tallies around, do you class, like at one stage 7 people were broken into in the one complex? Does that, when you do tallies, do you only say that was one break-in?
No, that's 7.
Okay, because...
Look, I take no pleasure in giving you these figures.
Yeah.
Every one of these is somebody's house or somebody's property or someone's car that someone has invaded. They've invaded that space, and that's it is heartbreaking for people, and it's hard for us to know that those sort of things are going on. But what's even harder is when I read the reports where the door's left open, or a premises insecure, or and those sort of things that are really preventable.
Mm. Okay, thank you.
One over here.
Thank you, Sergeant. I got 2 questions. One is, what action has been taken on all these burglaries and thefts and everything? So how you got the culprits, or how many of them are involved? Is it different people or the same person?
Yep.
Second one is, you have seen a big growth in Gungahlin over the past few years. How has your force grown with respect to that in the past few years?
Yep. So I apologise, I don't have the clear-up rate. I should say though that we have probably one of the best conviction rates in our judicial system of any jurisdiction, and we have a fairly good clear-up rate, well above what the ACT government set as our key performance indicator. It's not only my patrol that investigate and follow up these matters. It's our investigation teams. It's other police that are doing a huge amount of work, and we also have our forensic area that ties a lot of those crime scenes in with the forensic intelligence that comes out of the examinations of the scenes. So there's a fair amount of work goes into property crime offences, volume crime. We also have a crime disruption and targeting team that looks specifically at high volume crime such as burglary, stolen motor vehicles, and targets individuals, because what we find, and it's a constant, 80% of the crimes are committed by a very small number of people. It's not as if we have hundreds of criminals out there breaking into houses all over the place. We'll generally find that it's a very small number of people, and unfortunately there's a high number of recidivist offenders in the ACT. The ACT unfortunately has one of the highest rates of recidivism of anywhere in Australia, and so we actually we didn't make no apologies for this. We target those recidivist offenders, some of the people who are known to us, who continue to commit crime, we continue to target them because we know and our intelligence shows that they have continued to will continue to commit crime. Sorry, what was the second bit?
The population has grown big, so how...
Oh, the population. Yeah. Yep. So the Gungahlin patrol itself, as I said, is not the only police resources that are available here. I've got the full suite of policing services and resources available from ACT Policing and the broader AFP if I need them. So it's not the case that we're an island in the middle of nowhere. We have a huge backing from both ACT Policing and the AFP. We also have our ACT Futures program, which is looking at a different police services model into the future to make basically to future-proof the service that we deliver, because we recognise that the way we're delivering the services at the moment is not sustainable into the future. The crime types have changed, the demographics changed, the way people move around has changed, and we need to change with that. And that means we are going to be more mobile, we have more technology, we have better equipment and better facilities so that our members are not doing the traditional policing the way they used to. They're still doing that, but they're doing it in a more efficient way, in a more mobile, flexible way. So in terms of raw numbers, it's difficult to say we've had an increase in the population, so we need an increase in police, because if we keep doing that, we'll never stop. It'll be a self-licking ice cream. We actually are coming up with smarter ways and more efficient ways to deliver the same service and get the same results. If that makes sense.
You just said repeated.
Just neither.
Just the last one. Hello, hi. My name's Hari Ang. I'm the president of the South Asian Federation of ACT. Yeah, you alluded to the fact that repeat offenders, like if you've identified somebody, the same guy comes and does it again. Aren't these guys locked up?
Yeah, but they don't stay locked up. We're not allowed to do that. So once they're released, you know, I'm not saying every person that's been in custody comes out and re-offends, but a large proportion do.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, Rod. The numbers from this time last year to this year, what are the numbers in your force in Gungahlin? Have they gone up or down?
No, they're the same.
What about, there was talk about improving your station.
Yep.
Is there any budgeting put in to build a bigger station?
No.
Thank you.
Just wondering why your force numbers have stayed the same when Gungalin's population has increased. Shouldn't the number of police here also increase depending on the population?
Not necessarily, and it's not, as I said before, it's not a clear-cut equation to say we've increased the population, so we increase the number of police. We've changed some of the way we do business, so we don't necessarily need to have the same number of police directly proportionate to the population increase. If you ask any of my members, do we need more people? We'll all say, yep, we need more people.
Yeah.
And if you ask them if they like working at 3 o'clock in the morning, they'll say no, they don't like working at 3 o'clock in the morning because nobody likes to be up at that time. So.
Thank you.
Sorry. Hi, my name is John. How you going?
Good.
Working? Okay, yep. Question I have about the break-ins. I've just had a newborn and my wife's usually home alone most of the time while I'm at work. Is it still possible someone can break in during the day if someone's home? Or it's more like someone will break in if you're not home? Yeah.
Generally speaking, crooks are not going to break into a house if it looks like someone's there.
Yeah.
And that's why we say things, if you're going to go away on holidays, have a time and light on, or have your neighbours regularly check your house, that sort of thing. but I'm not saying that never happens. Sometimes it does. And please remember, though, although these numbers sound quite large, we live in one of the safest cities in Australia, really. And so we're not. It's not out of control. We're not saying you need to barricade everybody in and that sort of thing. Just be cautious and careful about how and why you do things. Getting to know your neighbours and know what the normal routine around your neighbourhood is a really good way to not only prevent crime but also identify what's suspicious and what's not. So things like Neighbourhood Watch and reporting things anonymously on Crime Stoppers really help to reduce the likelihood of these sort of things happening. Anything else?
Thank you, Rod, for coming along, and to you, Mick, as well. Really appreciate your work. There's a lot to be done. Cheers. Okay, get back in front of the screen. Our second speaker today is Jeff Robinson. Jeff's with the Canberra Grasslands team, and is talking about something I hadn't heard about. A portion of the Franklin Grasslands has been set aside in a process that Jeff, I think, will provide a little bit of history to. This is an important opportunity to reclaim a bit of open space in Gungahlin, which I think is pretty important. So, Jeff, I will make the slides appear. Stand by.
Thank you. Well, thanks. I'd like to thank Gungahlin Community Council for inviting me to talk tonight. My wife and I moved to Gungahlin. Well, sorry, we purchased a house here in 1993 in Ngunnawal, so we are long-term residents and very much appreciate the work that these guys do. My own passion is with nature, and so I want to talk to you tonight about Franklin Grassland Reserve. Also in the map says North Mitchell Grasslands, but it is in fact in Franklin, so we are subtly changing the name of that. So I've been working on this Franklin Grassland Reserve concept plan, which is nearing completion. So this is where it is. So it's on Franklin, corner of Flemington Road, and Well Station Road. So the tram goes down here. Most of you probably passed this hundreds of times. When you look through here, it just looks like a paddock with grass in it. However, it does have quite a lot of interesting bays, which we'll talk about. Oops, oh, I've turned it off. Okay, that's all right. Yes. So, at the moment, these are the various entrances. So there's 3 locked gates, and then these are the entrances which you can now walk through. But for a long time, those entrances were mostly blocked to people. I mean, the entrances were there, but because they had cattle grazing in there, they sort of tended to block the entrances. So one thing we've managed to do is to get those opened up, get some more mowing done within it, and I've noticed a lot more people are making use of it. There's some signage gone up there. Now, just want to talk about some of the other things. So the external fences, so it's got an external fence going all the way around it, and then there's got these fences in there as well. Now, if you look here, you can see these mown areas go all the way around, and those mown areas were put in for fire control. So if there is a fire in there, that's there to present the fire. But they also make very good walking tracks, and the fences go, the tracks go down there as well. These are other fences within there. These fences here, there's some sort of infrastructure. I can't remember what it is at the moment. So that's there to protect that. This fence here was the external boundary of the reserve, but it's now been increased in size. There's a stormwater drain goes through there. There's an old farm dam there. Mention all those things. And now, down here, if you're familiar with it, there's some big piles of rubble and dirt there at the moment. So what are the values of this in terms of nature? Well, the first thing is that there's natural temperate grassland there. So once back in the day, when Europeans arrived, 11% of southeast Australia was actually grassland. Most people tend to think we had trees everywhere, but it was areas that were treeless, and because most people are coast huggers, as I call them, that they never knew about these grasslands. So we've now got, not sure what I've done there yet. We've now got good quality, reasonably quality grasslands in these higher areas here and here. Just to show you an example of what they look like. So this is what a natural grassland looks like, and this is a photo taken at the site, and you can see there's quite a few wildflowers in there. This is one of the wildflowers that will start to appear soon. This one's there now, so this is called bindweed. Now, some of the other things in the site are these woodlands and wetlands. I'll just drop back for a minute. So, within the site here, so we can imagine that if we went back to before white people came here, this would have looked very much like would look like the landscape all around it. So, in these lower areas, we have these grasslands. In the higher areas, we start to get these woodlands. So, woodlands are scattered trees, yellow box red gum woodland mostly. A lot of these other little green patches are in fact things like raspberries and stuff. So they're actually weeds that are now, if you took the photograph today, they wouldn't be there. So this is what the woodlands look like from within the grasslands, and then we've got the dam. That also looks quite nice. Now, next slide. So now we've got 5 threatened species in this grassland. So this is the striped legless lizard, and I hope everyone in this room knows about these things or has some information on them, or at least you go and start looking up and reading about it, because Canberra has these, that is the home for these things. They were widespread throughout southeast Australia once upon a time, and Canberra, because of our history, they've retained a lot of these species. So this is a very important one. The next one is golden sun moth. Now, if you went into the reserve now, you'd actually see this thing flying. So I was there yesterday, and then I counted numbers of these moths there. So the male is quite dark. It's about this size, and it flutters around. This is the female, which has these bright yellow, sorry, I'm not quite used to this, has these bright yellow second wings, and they attract the male. But the female cannot fly, so the male's got to fly around and find the female. And this moth only lasts 1 or 2 days, because it doesn't feed when it comes out, unlike other moths. So it's actually a mouthless moth, and you've all heard the joke that we have these handicapped species in Canberra, legless lizards and mouthless moths, etc. So our next one, is this little plant here called Gungahlin peppercress, and this was first found near Gungahlin, actually by Friends of Grasslands when we were there one time. It's since been found there. There's now been found in 2 other places, but that makes this place rather special. Not a particularly spectacular plant, but nevertheless it's very rare and declared to be threatened. The next 2 is this Purunga grasshopper, has been found there, and the superb parrot. So the superb parrot has been found there, and it may start to nest there. It also has a number of other values. So it has a lot of Aboriginal or Indigenous values there. So if you can, if you're in there, you can sort of and look around. You can start to imagine what this area would have looked like a couple of, well, whenever it was, well, brought up into, say, about 1850. And as we're hearing a lot on news now, Aboriginal people used to burn this country. They burned it in such a way that they revived it, but that was also good protection against fire. So one of the things we would hope would happen here is there will be local, Ngunnawal and other Aboriginal people involved, and we will have cultural burning or cool burning, whatever you like to call it. So part of the management of this is it's going to be not only can local residents use this, but at times we'll be doing some other things, or the government will be doing other things in there which will perhaps be a little bit inconvenient, or people may even be a bit concerned about. But burning is one. The other thing we can do with this, we can improve the landscape. So in those areas of natural temperate grassland, we won't want to be interfering with those. But there's lots of places that are weedy that can be revived. Within the woodland itself, there's lots of opportunity to put in shrubs and other plants to attract smaller birds in. Research. Now, because this is a natural temperate grassland, money has been made available through offsets, and that's a whole other subject, but to improve the habitat for golden sunmoth. So there will in fact be a lot of research there. But also now in Canberra, there's a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of adults interested in citizen science. I don't know if you've heard of a thing called Canberra Nature Map. If you haven't, go on and have a look at it. It's an opportunity for people to take photographs of their favourite animals or plants, put them up, have them identified. At the same time, they all get mapped. So there are opportunities here for that. Education, we would hope that schools will make use of this, as would adults. So not only by opening this up to the community, can the community enjoy it, they can start to appreciate why we think grasslands and grassy woodlands and our other natural features are so important. And also, Friends of Grasslands is a community group. We've got lots of different types of people in our group. We do a lot of on-ground work. So there's another, we hope that the local community will get excited about this place and want to also help take care of it through things like weeding, etc. Then there's a lot of opportunities for recreation, such as walking, bird watching, gardens, and there's a lot of other opportunities. Things like walking dogs. That could be, there are snakes and stuff like that in there. So that's something that has to be worked through. Maybe dogs on lead. I don't think we want to see dogs not on lead, and maybe even that would be restricted. Currently, things that go into Canberra Nature Park tend to have restrictions on dogs. Okay, so these are just some of the other bayous that are there. There's I have a particular interest in reptiles. There's black snakes, there, brown snakes, and then these little creatures here, which are some of my favourites. And this is a very common grassland plant, this common everlasting. This is called scrambled eggs, is its common name. These things here, lemon beautyhead, there's masses of those which will come out closer to Christmas, and they're just great. Now, put in this reference here. The other thing a lot of people have heard about is we've had a crash in our insect populations. Now, most people think, well, so what? But insects can survive on this planet without us. We can't survive here without them. And that's becoming a thing of great concern. What's happening to our insects? Obviously, stuff like drought will affect them, but we've got to start thinking seriously about them. So if we can learn what's there, perhaps encourage others to come back, there's ways of doing that. But they're just some of the other ways. So even though when you go past it in the tram or drive past it, doesn't look much, if you go and have a walk around, it can look pretty spectacular. Right now, a number of these flowers are out, and you'll see them. Now, we've gone through a very harsh drought, and you'll see the impact of that. The grass looks pretty dry and ordinary. But one thing about Australian native plants and our grasses and wildflowers is they can hang on through these really bad conditions. And then when things improve, if they ever improve, they will come back into their own. So what's happened so far? So this was set aside many years ago because of its grassland and fauna values, as were a number of other grassland areas in Canberra. This one has been somewhat neglected for a long time, but there have been surveys for fauna and flora that have been ongoing. More recently, when Friends of Grassland started to get interested in that, and I won't go into all the background, but there's been a couple of community clean-up days. We've had a number of workshops and visits there. We've had visits by our local politicians, James Milligan and Michael Pedersen, and also Suzanne Orr, who's taken a great interest in it. So I've been working on a concept plan for this concept of conservation recreation reserve, and this offset funding has been obtained for that site. So I just wanted to mention, this here. So the concept we have here is a concept that's been developed in Melbourne by having these conservation and recreation areas, starting with the grasslands. So the key thing is we want to keep those grasslands intact. Now, a lot of people in conservation have always thought these areas are so rare, do we lock them up and keep the public out? Wiser heads said no, if you want to keep these areas, you've got to encourage the public to come in. So you landscape them in such a way that they don't tread over all the high quality areas, but they have access, they can see what's there, start to appreciate it and start to look after it. So what next is, well, I'll finish working on, there's an offset plan being finalised. There will be a landscape architect employed by the ACT government to come up with suggestions. We've had a workshop earlier where we had a number of the stakeholders, including Gungahlin Community Council came along to that. Sometime next year we'd like to have an open day to show what the plans are, have a lot of people in the community come along, give us their thoughts, etc. Then those things will be finalised. I don't know if landscape reserve, that's not quite right. I don't know what I had in mind there. And hopefully to create a community to participate and then encourage community use of this, whether it's purely for recreation or whatever, or to go along and just enjoy what's there. We'll have some facilities there. So what is currently a rather degraded looking area hopefully will turn into something that we can all be very proud of, and then we can start to spread this concept out into some of our other areas where we can combine conservation and recreation. Okay, thank you for that. I'll say, my contact details, that's not working.
Thanks, Jeff. Hang on, I'll just dive in and get a question.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to put up my contact details, but that's all right.
Yeah, no, flash that up.
These guys.
I'll jump in with a quick question. Is there anywhere for parking to access the site other than
yes. Good question.
Just walking in?
Well, that's one thing we have to do some work on. No, this is not working. Okay, so if you look at some of the other places where people use these areas, that government has put in parking. So there's not much parking there at the moment because this was just a paddock put aside with no thought given to that. But that's one of the issues that we have to work on, so we can encourage people to go there, park. Some people are parking there at the moment because it's close to the tram. During the daytime, I see that occurring. So yes, that's one issue we have to think about. There's can I have that back? It's gone. Okay. You still got that thing?
Yeah, the clicker has died.
Oh, the clicker has died. Okay, well in that first one, where I showed you one of the gates, there is a bit of a parking area there that we could possibly develop that.
I've got a question, or a couple of questions. First of all, what's an offset plan? That's the first one.
Okay. So we use offsets in a lot of things. Now, in a lot of a lot of areas that where you've got species or what we call ecological communities declared to be endangered, threatened or whatever. But then you also need that site for some critical infrastructure, like you need to widen the road or something. So what happens? The government or someone says, well, we need this. So as a result, you try to create an offset which will enable you to take a bit of land somewhere else where it's not being looked after, degraded, whatever, and then maybe spend money to improve that. So that's the concept of offsetting, yeah.
Okay, well, that leads into my second question, which is what's to stop any future government saying, oh, stuff these grasslands, we can put houses there. That's so.
Well, I think yes, well, this is where the community comes in, I think. And our group's been around for a while now. We do a lot of advocacy around grasslands, around their management, and I think we have been quite successful, both as an example and as a lobbyist, in making government aware of these things. For a long time, all ACT politicians talked about grasslands. It was the in thing to do. So we need to get them to start talking about those things again. Alistair, I hope you're paying attention to this. So I think that, and having the community come and use it, I think that would be important. I've been walking around there sometime, people come up to me and say, are you the owner of the cattle? And I say no. And other people have said, we assume this is just waiting for development. So, we need to turn those things around. And these sorts of areas, I mean, if you think about it, there's 5 sort of growing criticisms of these things in Canberra. First of all, fire is an issue. Snakes are an issue, but I love snakes, but they can be an issue. Things like allergies. Now, native grasses are less causing of allergies than some of the other grasses, so we want to get rid of the phalaris that's there, for example. They're unsightly. So there's those sorts of things. So unless, and you'll see examples of those, unless we work to do something with these places, so I think that's the answer. Yeah.
Yep. Right, no, next question.
Is there a natural waterway, or?
Yes. Sorry, that's. I meant to show.
Because I know there's a dam there, but I'm pretty sure there originally probably was a natural waterway. Wasn't there?
Right. Oh, good. We got this back. Can I show you? Sorry,
you can't have that.
Oh, can't have it. All right. So you see at the very top, see where that pathway goes around? That's an old ephemeral wetland. So what ephemeral wetlands are, and they're quite common through this through this region. So there were sort of areas where the water drained to, and sometimes they'd have water in, and other times they'd dry out. So they're a pretty special feature in this area. So that's one. And so what we're thinking there is if we can get some of the stormwater piped into there, so it would then fill and dry out. And if you walk around there, there's still fairly soft underfoot. So that's one area. Through here, it's not so obvious, but you can see through there, there's a drainage line and one through there. Now these are not natural. These have been, well, they might have been natural, but there's been stormwater has been cut through there. But rather than sort of try and change it back to something that would have been there, we'll just make use of that. A lot of wild ducks and other animals here. Sorry, the other thing I meant to mention here is that we're going to see if we can use this. This makes quite some interesting hills, and you get some good views of the pardon? No, there isn't.
No, asbestos dumped in the rubble. Yep. The next question.
Well, I've been told that, sorry, but yes.
I think this is a good idea. So what sort of time frame we are looking at?
All right. Well, I've been discussing these with people in the ACT government. They told me not to say anything, but we hope to have the landscape plan done next year. So if we have some sort of community event late autumn, maybe they'll have plans. I think that's being optimistic, but anyway, things are happening. Some of the things happening now is that they've started doing some more work on it. They've started to get rid of a lot of the briar rose. extending the area, slashed area. Now, to many conservation people, you know, you left these things alone. The view is now changing. If we can slash that phalaris, burn it or whatever, that will encourage the native grasses and wildflowers to come back. So it's going to be a gradual process, and I think the interesting thing about this thing is not that we'll have a fairly pristine thing, it'll be something that happens over time. So part of the education of the community is that they can see change, hopefully for the better, despite climate change over that time period. Yep.
That's great. Yep. Yep.
Just like in terms of community consultation, like people in those neighborhood adjacent to this parkland, are they consulted?
Well, maybe I should talk a little bit about Susan Orr. This whole thing happened because Susan Orr lives in one of those apartments, and she approached the Conservation Council and said, well, what's happening with that? And they contacted me, and I went and talked to her. And frankly, before I'd gone out and looked at this, and despite being president of Friends of Grasslands, you don't get a chance to look at everything. I thought, I'm not sure why we're keeping this, because it looked pretty horrible. But so then I did my homework to see that, in fact, it was on the top list of grasslands, probably because of the threatened species that were there. So before I went here, I went out and had a look. It's got some quite nice stuff in there. And then when I talked to her, having been down to Melbourne several times, and our own thinking has been, well, you don't lock these places away, you open them up as they've done in Melbourne. They don't get hordes of people in, but people feel welcome to come in there, and then this is all part of the education. I mean, I would think that one of the things I very much appreciate about Australia is, well, is our nature. We've got fantastic landscapes, we've got some fantastic flora and fauna. Indigenous people, the role that they've played within this, until we rediscover that. So their values are really important, and I think, so if we can bring people in and they understand those values more, I think the country will move ahead. And Canberra is pretty advanced in these areas already, so yeah.
Okay. Unless there are any other burning questions, I might thank Jeff for... Oh, burning question. Just stand by.
Jeff, I noticed in the surrounding area there are weeds such as Bathurst Burr, Salvation Jane or Patterson's Curse and St John's Wort. Is anything being done to stop those getting into this area? Because one of those photographs looked horribly like St John's Wort to me in that grassland area.
I left the photo of St John's Wort out.
Yeah.
There is St John's Wort in there, but it is being attended to. But that is a very nasty weed. I've spent a lot of my time, you know, since my early 50s weeding and stuff like that. So yes.
And we have got superb parrots in the area too, by the way.
Well, there's certainly superb parrots use that woodland up there, yeah. And I saw one killed on the roadside recently, so I took a photo and put it up on Canberra Nature Map. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. I think I don't think a lot of people knew about this, and I think it's a great story. So great job. Thank you very much.
If you want to know more about it, please contact me. Happy to talk to you about it, take you to the site, you know, because community engagement is going to come from people like you sitting in this room. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. All right, so we'll just have a quick microphone change for our third speaker. As Krishna is going to talk about the upcoming Hindu temple in Moncrief. So I'll just get the slides. All right, you're good to go? All right, I'll get your slides up.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to present the facility we are building in Gungahlin for the community. And the facility is being built by the community. We are just enabling, Krishna Nadimpalli, and I have our architect here, Steve, and I will present the general things, and then I will hand over to Steve to take the technical bits of the architecture part of it. And then after that we will come back and take your suggestions. Next, please. Oh, it is. Yeah, we are enabling the community to build a facility for the community. If you look at the Gungahlin is the fastest growing suburb, growing area in the whole Australia, and at the same time, that is the multicultural communities are coming and living in this area. We have about, in 2016 census, there are about 4,500 Hindus living in this area, and there were so many small groups. They were thinking of having a small temple, but as a president for Federation of Indian Associations that time, when all these different groups were coming, and then we said, now we all need to put it together and have a one facility so that we can maintain the sanctity and serve for everyone's needs rather than having small beds here and there. And with that vision, we started, next please, we registered it as an association in 2014, and then yeah, that is the team of the executive board, and also there are so many volunteers. We have more than 100 volunteers working for this project. Next please. And we have Ramesh Kandukuri there. He is the construction manager now. And yeah, in 2014, we registered and we applied for the direct sale of land to build this facility. And yeah, it took about, this is the 6th year. We have we have reached to some stage of having an assurance that we can build a temple. In December last year, the cabinet has endorsed that yes, you can have a piece of land in Moncrief. We were asking for a bit of bigger land, but that is the piece of land that is available, and it is like take it or leave it, and we are going with that. And this is about 6,000 square meters of the land. And just a little bit giving you bit of background for the Hindu communities. We have too many festivals. Almost every month we have a big festival coming up. And on every festival, everyone would like to come and worship or practice the things in the temple. So that is the practice. And every birthday or everything, they are a little bit of coming to the temple and committed to those values and those practices. When you have about 4,500 people in this area, that was in 2016, and it is still growing. And if on a festive day, if half of the people turns up, that is 2,000, and then 1,000 cars or 1,000 families turning up there on a festive day, but it will be distributed for the whole day. So that's why we need a little bit bigger space. But yes, we have got 6,000 square meter block, and we are happy to run forward with this. And in December, when we got that, we need to show the financial viability, because this is the community land. Community is building the facility for the community, and without having any land or any assurance, it will be very difficult to raise money. The problem here is we are in the Associations Act. That means if we don't get the land, we can't build a facility, and whatever funds we raise, it needs to go somewhere else, but we can't return back that money back to the people. So these are the situation. So that's why we were having a lot of difficulties in convincing, and finally, yes, we got this this agreement with the government that they have endorsed that this is the piece of land you will be getting, provided you show the $2 million assets with you within 6 months. And then once now we have done that in May 2019 with our friends and families in Gungahlin and in Canberra, and we were able to show almost close to $2 million worth of assets for the facility to be built. And the next condition is the DA approval. Once all this, the DA process, you know how complicated it is. You are seeing so many DA approvals coming into Gungahlin Community Council for presentations. And once that is done, then the land will be transferred to the Canberra Hindu Mandir. Just the Mandir means it is temple. So And we are continuing with a lot of activities for fundraising, and currently we have enough money to complete the first phase of the temple. We will be coming into those details, and we are keep continuing our fundraising. We also do a lot of community activities. We were frequently running the groceries and collecting all the materials and giving it to communities at work. And I remember I think last year, we gave about 4 or 5 carloads of groceries. We gave it to the communities at work for distribution. And also we started this 108 blood donation registrations to Red Cross, and we successfully completed that last year, a year ago. And we were part of the fundraising for farmers. What we have done is, as part of my other hat, we did a 10-day walk from Sydney to Canberra, visiting Australian farmers during the drought. And as a part of that bigger goal, we raised about 30K and gave it to Australian helpers. And the temple group is very much part of that in raising funds for that. And currently we are working on bone marrow donor awareness program that we have built a lot of activities and letterboxing, all these things we will be continue in doing that. We are continuously doing the fundraising. I think in February or March we did a fundraising night, and that night we were able to get 170K commitments from the community. That was a big achievement for the group to get there. And we run the group prayers for the Hindu prayers for the peace, and those things are keep going. Facilitating festivals to celebrate. That is recently in the Moncrief Mingle, we were supposed to have the Diwali festival in Moncrief Park, and the temple, they were prepared everything to give food for 3,000 people for free. We were get everything done, but unfortunately it was very severe winds on the day and the event was cancelled. And we have a lot of volunteers, and we are continuously doing this community work. Next, please, Peter. If any of you remember that in 2015 I gave this presentation, and that time it was in library building, in the Gungahlin library, and I gave all the presentation. That is the concept plan. But now it is a little bit of smaller size of the block, so just to bring you back, if any of you know that, the memories. Next, please. Yeah, currently this is the site of the land. This is Horse Park Drive, and if you are going onto this Merby Drive, and there are signals here, that is O'Keefe Avenue, and if you go down, there is the Moncrief Park is there on that side. And this is the block of land. You can see there is a signboard there, that is the land for the community facilities or something written there. And the total is 10,000 square meters, and this block is given for the temple now. And the access will be from Hoffman Street, not from Merby Drive. And yeah, that is the piece of land, and that is the 6,000 square meters block we have got. Next, please. And this is all that Hindu Agam Shastra means. That is the Vastu, that is the direction of the god to face, and some features need to be in this corner or that corner, and all those, there are a lot of rules around it. So it is the whole plans are compliance to the Agam Shastra. And in Hinduism there are we have too many gods, means too many incarnations of God. And we have 3 different facilities, one for Shiva and his family, and one for Vishnu incarnations, and one for Guru means it is like a saint and a master. So we are building a facility for the master. In fact, the main deity in that master's facility is, some people say he is Muslim, and some people say he is Hindu, and he is Sai Baba. But we are very open-minded, and we celebrate all the religions, and that facility is more for spiritual rather than religious. So it is we are putting all these things together, and it is coming into Australia. So that perspective is already built in. We are having Utsav Hall, that is the celebration hall. That is for a multi-purpose hall. That will be for 500 people. It will be accommodated for to have a wedding or any celebrations happening. So that can be used for any group, any community groups can come and hire and use it. Then when you see the Steve's presentation, how we are separating that facility, at the same time it is connected with the temples as well, so that every community can use. And there are other facilities there coming up in that. There are some other halls we are trying to build. That is a bit of small events. People can use it, and there are some meditation courses or some language classes or anything. So for all that purpose, there are some other halls coming up in that facility. Means that every community can use the facilities there. And one little bit maybe into the future is this is a part of the temple. Maybe there may be some restrictions of they can't use the non-vegetarian or alcohol in that premises. Like that, there are some minor things will be there. Otherwise, that will be for everyone to use it. And that will be some educational facility. There will be a library for it, and all those things are coming into that. And our aim is to get at least 20 car parks. But that will be the challenge. We will be leaving it to Steve in this block of land. Next, please. We have got all these statues. They are all white marble and black granite, and we have got a lot of material already donated by our devotees, and they are all for the last 4 years. I think they are staying in a container in a farmhouse there in Sutton. Next, please. Yeah, these are the little bit timelines. Now we are you can see the concept plans which Steve is preparing. That in December we will be having, in the first week of December, we are trying to have a pre-DA meeting. Then by January the DA submission will be there. Hopefully everything will go as planned, and by April 2020 DA and that land acquisition will be done. Following that, we will have a foundation day to start the construction. Then the first phase of the temple will be completed by end of December, and then in 3 years' time, we will be completing the whole project. And now I will leave it with Steve to go through architectural plans, and then I will come back to take your suggestions. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishna. Actually, Steve, I'll just grab this one for you.
That is the next one.
It's some of the diagrams from the initial. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Krishna. So, my name's Stephen Cetrick. I'm the Director of Thursday Architecture. We've been working with the CHM community group to develop concept plans for the Mandir proposed out at Moncrief. There's a few design considerations that we worked on and we developed in order to get to where we are now with this plan. The brief was to come up with a concept for a temple that would engage with the community and perhaps be of a nature that would be open and transparent to everybody across different generations. So the challenge for us, or I guess perhaps what we really relished and enjoyed the opportunity to design, was a contemporary Hindu temple that took on the notion of some traditional Indian architecture, some traditional Hindu temple forms, but also considered in a way that was more of a contemporary, sympathetic approach that would perhaps work in with the streetscape. I'm not sure if you can picture a Hindu temple in of your mind, but they can be quite vivacious structures, quite tall, with a lot of adornment and a lot of the dyes, as Krishna was saying. So we've taken that notion and looked at how we can go about it in a more of a contemporary way. So there's a few images that we'll talk to. If they're included in the slide, we'll be able to sort of explain that. But what we're looking at the moment is obviously the floor plan of the proposal. It obviously has been worked to the Agam Sastra principles that Krishna was talking about. So we have effectively two buildings. The main temple structure, just to give you a bit of orientation back to the aerial photo that Krishna had before. North is straight up the page. So we have Hoffman Street, which is the entry on the eastern side, and that is where the main entry is. So temple design, the temple structure must face east, according to the Agam Sastra, and the Baba temple must be within the central axis of the temple structure itself. So we have the Baba temple, which houses the prominent or eminent god within the temple, and then there's the Vishnu and the Shiva temples on the southern side and the northern side of the Baba temple. And then in the middle here is the hall, which is used for community facilities. And so the idea is on the big events that Krishna was talking about is that this facility can open up and be quite a flexible space to allow the procession that occurs during Hindu meditation and prayer processions. The next building is, we'll just call that the annexure, so that is facilitating the function of the main building. So that houses obviously the main entrance, the office reception, there's a small shop. To the north is the community building, which would be most likely housing yoga sessions and meditation sessions. So again, that's sort of pushing on that notion of this being able to contribute back to the community and being open and accessible to everybody. On the southern side of the site is the kitchen and canteen hall, and that is there set up to facilitate a lot of the functions that occur. So car parking is arranged obviously on the eastern side to take advantage of the entry to the site. It's a little bit blurry on this detail, but basically the vehicle arrangement is entry in, entry out. There's space for waste trucks to manoeuvre on site, so it's compliant with the TCS requirements. And also we've worked on, I guess, what we have been given, a 6,000 square metre site and a brief of a space that can accommodate these large festivities. We've crunched it as hard as we can to maintain the planning rules and setbacks. There's about 57 cars accommodated on site. The planning territory plan calls for 4 spaces per 100 square metres, and so generating that calculation, there's a requirement of about 65 car parks. So we're not far off the mark, but what we're exploring now is basement options. So this is this diagram that sits underneath the kitchen, and so we're looking at basements, so whether that's storage, additional car parking, etc., etc. Can I get the next slide, please? So what you can see here is just some streetscape views of our initial concepts. We presented this to the community a week ago with a lot of explanatory diagrams about how we've managed to interpret A, the brief, B, traditional Hindu architecture, and our taken it in a contemporary way. In a very sort of short summary, we've sort of looked at inspiration of Hindu arches, which are Indian arches, which are very prevalent through Indian architecture, and interpreted that into a modern contemporary way, so that could be sort of quite delicate steelwork. The structure itself sits on top of a podium, as most temples do, and the stairs leading up to that podium creates a bit of a procession, so you're actually making a conscious movement going upstairs and into a holy space, and so we thought that procession was quite important. And we're celebrating that by creating this sort of extra fenestration through the facade that replicates those stairs. And I'm just thinking of another image that we had in our presentation, which was a reference of stairwells, which are also prominent through India which are these amazing structures, these sort of step structures that go down into wells that collect water, and so those images and those sort of designs have informed this image. So in summary, this is the front entrance, the main entrance, just in front of the car park. To the north, this element here is the yoga rooms. This plain element here is the communal kitchen, and you can just get a glimpse of the temple structure behind that. So if I could get the next slide, please. This is an image looking, probably standing north of the site, looking south. So what you're looking at now is the combination of both buildings. So this is the annexure with the yoga hall facing north with lots of windows facing out onto the northern side of the site. Again, picking up that notion of traditional Indian architecture and this fenestration of steps and blade walls and sort of movement of the walls to create articulation and fenestration to create a bit of visual interest to the building, and then this modern take on a traditional Hindu temple form. So that is the structure that sits over on the top of the Baba temple, which is important to be the most prominent element of the building. Just to give you an appreciation of scale, that measures at about 12 metres high, and so the rest of the structure is sort of sitting at around 5-6 metres, 5 metres down on this side. So that's very preliminary ideas that we're talking about, still in design development, but we're getting there. Next slide. And here is just an aerial photograph of the site. So here we have Heffernan Street, the entry into the site, the car parking around, the exit out, a little service lane that manages the waste and deliveries to the canteen facility. This sort of butterfly roof structure with the entry coming into the annex building. And I guess what was probably important to note is that as you walk up through here, you can get to see through this building, which is quite transparent and open, through to a landscaped break between the two structures, and then into the temple and the hall itself. Yep.
Krishna, I'll just ask you to use the microphone.
And here, on the top of that temple, we have the gopur. We say that the tomb, and there will be three things will be coming up south, because we are having three facilities. And in the plan, you might not have seen some lines that the 500 people I was talking about. This is the hall in the middle. And inside the walls are collapsible, means are openable, like this hall and that hall, so that can be separated for someone to use this multi-purpose hall, or if that is required with the temples, that can be opened up to make it bigger. And the total capacity is something like 500 people in the common hall, and there are about 200 to 250 people in each of these three facilities. And in addition to that, these common halls and canteen and those things. And Steve was talking about that kitchen. Kitchen is the community kitchen. Food is always an integral part of the religion and as part of that community. So we are planning every week there will be one free dinner kind of. That is the community kitchen. Very big community kitchen is needed. So that's what we are building into that kitchen and canteen together.
Thanks, Krishna. It's just one of these. It's really interesting hearing how you're trying to weave the old and the new together. Any questions, queries? Damien.
I hope that's on. Looks like a marvellous plan, and I hope you get approval. I have two questions. First of all, the statues in the container, I feel sorry for the poor statues. Where are they likely to go? Are they inside statues, or will they be external to the building? Okay, that's good, because as the sergeant reported earlier, they might go and walk about. And second one is, I I note you refer to 500 people for weddings, etc. I'm aware that I think the Islamic school in Nichols was knocked back because of a parking issue some time ago. I think if you're going to have 500 guests routinely and 65 car parking spaces, you might want to revisit that because, you know, your neighbours may not enjoy that every weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, what we are planning to do that is that we, on that big festive day, we will be putting a bus service from Gungahlin town centre to there. People can park here and drive there. And there are a few other things that on that side, the shopping mall coming up, and on the east side, at this stage, that is, I think, for Islamic school, and we'll be talking to them to use the facility, their car park in the week. Our main use of that car park, our main requirement for the car park in the evenings or in the weekends. So that time the school is closed, so we may get that. And on the other side of the Horse Park Drive, the Taylor school has come up. So there are few things around, and there is a little car park near the park as well, Moncrief Park. Main thing is we will be putting a free bus service from Gungahlin to the temple on every festive day. So that is the plan what we are having.
That's good. I can see a case being made to extend the light rail line down Mirabai Drive, but that was just being mischievous. Yeah.
Thank you, Krishna. The plan looks really beautiful, and looking at the traditional way, modern take on the traditional temple is amazing. My only question is, there is very little space, green space there. So do we have much trees around it, or what's your plan for putting more green around the temple? Yeah.
There are a few things that this part in the middle there are I think maybe 6 or 8.
There's about a 6 metre break between the two buildings, and that extends around the perimeter of the main hall, where we'll be engaging with landscape architect to come up with a concept plan with the DA to improve the landscape amenity around the site.
And another thing is, this is only 6,000 square meters, and may not be, we will be having our own landscape to have some plants and those things. But on the south side, it is a big park is there. There are a few eucalyptus trees there, and that is a big park. And maybe into the future, if the future government allows us, we can adopt that park and build more green space there into that.
Another question? Yeah.
I just have a quick query on the top of this, the main, So usually, traditionally there should be something. It's not flat.
No, that is, that will be there. Like that. That will be there. This is just the concept plan we are drafting. It is not the complete plan yet.
Okay, so it will be, okay. And conical or some, Gopuram, Yes.
What we will be doing is this will be more
colostrum, okay.
We are having a lot of options looking at it, and this Shiva and Vishnu will be having more traditional Gopura, and the Guru will be having a little bit of more contemporary, and we will be syncing everything into a beautiful work.
It's question as a civil engineer, the roof area seems to be very.
Please wait. For people who are listening online.
Hi, a question from a civil engineer. The roof area, the runoff, have you made the runoff calculations that would come in? So you'd need very special forward works for the civil works for that block.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that's it's a good point to make at this stage. This is the first sketch. We're just talking about the very first concept. So what we're talking about is the design concept, getting the planning right, the civil engineering, the hydronic engineering, the structural engineering will certainly come into effect. They're very, very important to consider. We would like to retain stormwater for use on site as much as possible. We'd like to celebrate the seasons by, if it does rain, have that open and access through the detail and the design and construction of the building. Absolutely. The roof structure as well, it does give us opportunity to have solar panels and collect electricity. So there's a really strong green agenda that will obviously be formed into the design when we get to that level of detail Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? I'm conscious that we still have one more speaker to go, and I want to make sure we do that. Thank you very much, Krishna and Steve, for coming along. A really exciting project. So we're fortunate in Gungahlin to get pretty strong support from most of our MLAs to come out and speak to our community. That's not the case for all the community councils in Canberra. So I think it's terrific that Alistair Coe, one of the Yerrabi MLAs and the leader of the opposition, of course, here in Canberra, is able to make the time to come and talk to us. I know he had a warm-up event a couple of weeks ago at the National Press Club, but this, we know, is the main gig. So with that, Alistair Coe.
Good, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Peter, and it was good to hear from Jeff and also Rod, and of course from Krishna and Stephen. I think we really are blessed in Gungahlin and right across Canberra to have so many people who punch well above their weight, and very often, in fact, I think we have people that fly under the radar. But when you think about just how many hundreds of hours of work goes into these sorts of projects to get it to this stage, or you think about just the extraordinary number of hours that the Friends of the Grasslands and other green groups do, it really is a pretty special place that we've got here. Now, I firmly am of the view that Canberra is a great place, but it can be even better. And we've got to make sure that we're not complacent, that we're not apathetic. We've got to make sure that we've got high expectations, and we really do create the world-class city and world-class services that I think we deserve, that we're capable of, and importantly, that we pay for. Because the rates, taxes, fees and charges in Canberra are very expensive. The cost of living is expensive. So when you have those sorts of costs, it's reasonable to expect a commensurate level of services as well. So a big focus for the opposition and for the Canberra Liberals is, of course, doing what we can to bring down the cost of living, but also to make sure that the other side of the ledger, the service delivery, is as practical and as efficient as possible. And that's where I think some of the services, especially here in Gungahlin, are being let down. Now, there's no shortage of issues. Transport and planning, I know are two ones that regularly get a run here at GCC, and I'm very happy to talk about those. There's also recreational facilities that I think Gungahlin desperately needs, as well as improvements to health and education. So what I thought I would do, with the permission of you, Peter, is just to make this as relevant as possible. I'm quite happy to take questions and just to make it as dynamic as we can.
Yep.
Are people open to that as a concept?
Yep. Yeah, I think the easy way to do this is, as you say, with questions, and then I'm sure if the questions flag, Alistair can jump in and fill in some ideas. Yep. So does anyone want to lead away? Well, just third row there. I'll start back and then back there.
Alistair, excuse me. Alistair, you said about reducing taxes and rates and whatever, but isn't the offset of that services are reduced? I don't mind paying reasonable taxes if the services remain the same, but when they downgrade just because we got less taxes, aren't you defeating the purpose?
Well, it's the value proposition is a real one, and I know that there are many Canberra families that can manage the increasing fees and charges. But let's not forget that there are many, many households that can't. Here in the ACT, we've got 36,000 people that live below the poverty line. 8,000 kids in the ACT live below the poverty line. We have a real working poor challenge in the ACT. When you've got median rent of $570 for a house, if you're a courier driver on $45,000 a year, and your fortnightly pay is $1,500 after tax, you factor in rent, there's not much left. So we've got to be very careful in all the decisions to make sure they're fair, and I don't think the rates regime is fair. But regarding the service delivery, services have to be delivered better. I think it's as simple as that. You know, I think the bus network's a classic example. Are people getting a better bus network now than they were a year ago? It's costing the same amount. I just don't think we are. So I think there are some very practical things that we can do to improve the service delivery. But being mindful of those that are struggling has to be front of mind, I think.
The next question was just here.
Alistair, I was going to ask about the cost of land in the ACT. Obviously, it's a very good profitable venture for the ACT government.
Can I ask you to speak up? The microphone won't amplify.
Yeah. Happy to repeat it if need be.
Yeah. Okay. So the cost of land in the ACT is quite a hurdle for first home buyers. There's a land rent scheme which helps some people, but the actual initial value, you know, of a $300,000 for a start block for 270 square metres, that's manipulated by the government. What can be done about that?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. You know, to put this in perspective, when my parents first moved into Gungahlin, they bought a 900 square metre block of land for $87,000. $100 a square metre back in 1997 in Nichols. Now you're at $1,100 a square metre. You know, 1,000% inflation. It's just phenomenal. So there is a massive issue. Obviously, we've got to be very careful that we maintain people's land values so that they're not devalued. People have gone and taken mortgages out and they've bought properties, so we've got to make sure that is maintained. But I do believe that the land constraint that we have in the ACT is very artificial. There is no shortage of land. There is no reason that land should be $1,000 a square metre. There's no reason why there should be just this one-size-fits-all approach to land release in the ACT. You know, I don't think it's right that we forever shut out suburbs from having trees, which is pretty much what much of the planning policy achieves at the moment. You know, you have 250 square metre blocks with a plot ratio of 80 or 90% and no front yard. There is no tree there forever. And I just don't think that's fair, that you're paying top dollar and you don't get the benefit of a basic service like street trees. So we've got to make sure that I think that land prices increase at a far more measured rate. I think something like 2 to 5% is far more reasonable than having land prices increase at 10 or 15% compounding. That's a start, but I'm always mindful of the purchase decisions that people have already made and making sure we honour that and we respect that and make sure that we don't, you know, flood the market. But I do firmly believe that a increase of land prices in the vicinity of 2 to 5% is much fairer than what's currently done. But unfortunately, it's going to take a long time to correct this. There also does have to be some changes in the how land comes to market. You know, just last week I was asking questions of the planning minister in what is in effect estimates committee, and they've got this affordable housing regime where blocks, depending on what tier you're in, you can get a house and land for $350,000, $380,000 or $430,000. House and land. That's the policy. The land alone is being sold to builders for over $300,000. It's impossible. It's actually impossible to deliver a single property in that sort of arrangement. So there are all sorts of problems, but it's going to be difficult to unpick, but it's got to be started now. Otherwise, the problem is it's going to perpetuate.
I'm going to ask one because I have a microphone. There's was some press recently about the scoping study for essentially what to do next now that Calvary's got old, and essentially the Northside Hospital, and you know, the options being canvassed are to rebuild Calvary, augment Calvary or build on a greenfield site. What's the opposition position on a north side hospital?
Well, firstly, of course, we do have a north side hospital. It's Calvary, but that does need improvement, as does the Canberra hospital. Whether the ACT, as it stands now, is big enough for 2 tertiary hospitals, look, I don't think it is currently. It's not to say that it won't be, so therefore you do have to plan for the future to ensure that we do have that service delivery and that capability down the track. Calvary, I think, will need significant investment, but as anybody would know, trying to get from Taylor or Moncrief at the wrong time of day to Calvary is a battle. It's a real battle. So I think people in Gungahlin, particularly the northern suburbs of Gungahlin, are really poorly serviced when it comes to emergency care in particular. I think things are much better with regard to access to GPs now, but emergency care. Last election, we brought forward a policy for a local emergency department here. That's certainly something that we're considering, but making sure that there is adequate provision for a growing population in the north of Canberra is central. But I'm not going to say it's easy, and that's why you have all the health economists, you have all the health planners, the demographers, you have a big team of people working on that. But as an immediate priority, dealing with people in Gungahlin in emergency situations, I think has to be top of mind.
Thank you, Peter. You asked my question, so I will ask another question here.
Sure.
I have few more, but I'll one by one. What is your government going to do to bring more employment in this area? Because we have to commute every day, almost all.
Yeah. Well, look, the frustrating answer in part is, stay tuned. But we very much appreciate this as a major issue. I firmly am of the view that our suburbs should be suburbs and our town centres should be town centres. And at the moment, the Gungahlin town centre is not a genuine town centre. It's a retail centre, and in part, it's got some recreational activities, but it doesn't have the employment that it should have. Employment brings a lot of things, but one of the things that it of course does is it does relieve congestion on the roads when you actually have people living closer to where they live, and then you also actually improve those who have to travel away as well. So you get multiple benefits by having more people working closer to where they live. But also it just ensures that the whole town centre is more sustainable. It shouldn't be that when you walk down the main street at midday on a work day that it's quiet. That should be the busiest time of day in any other place. So employment in Gungahlin is central. The federal government has committed to DHA moving out here. They're going to do a whole build for that, I believe, so that's still 2 or 3 years away. I think the ACT government could do a lot more with regard to employment here. And also I think there are planning and zoning decisions that have to be made, especially by way of having office blocks here, and more part-time or casual office space as well.
Just here on the left, across the aisle.
Do you have any ideas on how to increase the income base for the local government apart from land sales and stamp duty and rates? For instance, that'd be the main ones. Are there any others you can think of that might be able to be increased?
There's of course a heap of revenue streams that the government have, and they have varying degrees of efficiency and varying degrees of fairness. One of the things that I think we should be doing is making sure that the growth of the region, where possible, is harnessed in the ACT. And when you have a family that goes and buys a block of land in Gugong because they couldn't afford one here, I think it's a missed opportunity for the ACT. Not only do you lose that profit from the land sale up front, you often lose the stamp duty, but then you also lose the rates revenue forever, and you also lose the income from the Commonwealth Government that follows the population. So for a single house that goes over the border into New South Wales, over the course of 30 years, the ACT stands to lose about $800,000. $800,000 per house that's built on that side of the border rather than here. And you go out to Sutton or go to Murrumbateman or go to Googong or Tralee or South Jerrabomberra, you're seeing if every one of those is around $1 million over 30 years, yet they're still going to use ACT services by and large, you're talking about a huge lost opportunity for the ACT. I think there is plenty of land in the ACT to accommodate this growth. Obviously, there are a lot of apartments going up, but I think there's also space for standard residential homes as well. So definitely making sure where possible, where people are going to use ACT services, that they're paying ACT taxes, I think has to be part of the solution. In effect, building the tax base by having more people here rather than just over the border.
Just follow up that with, do you have any ideas, as a way of attracting people to Canberra, of attracting businesses to Canberra? Like, could it be an Australian Silicon Valley, for instance?
Now look, I think you're spot on. The ACT is actually in a very unique situation. We don't have rural roads by and large. We don't have regional hospitals. We don't have tiny schools or one-person police stations. We should, I think, be a very efficient jurisdiction. And if you're an efficient jurisdiction, you can be a relatively low taxing jurisdiction. And if you're a low taxing jurisdiction, you then become a place where people really want to invest. We should be a nimble jurisdiction. We don't have to deal with councils in the way that other state governments do. So there are all sorts of efficiencies here. And that should mean that we can create particular conditions for particular industries or for business in general that make this a very attractive place. But once again, you've got just over the border, the New South Wales government is competing pretty hard for all of these businesses at the moment, and we've got to fight back. We've got to do what a federation's meant to do, and that's have jurisdictions competing with each other. At the moment, it just seems like we've given up the race, and we're quite happy for Queanbeyan to win it.
Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident. You've got to attract it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Right, next question here on the right.
On the question of land sales, everybody knows that there is no more land. There is what there is, and nobody's making any more. So, what the problem that I see that the ACT has is that it's a border locked entity. What conversations, if any, are happening? I mean, I wasn't born here. I don't have this thing that the ACT is the ACT and there's north and south, and I don't understand it. Right? I think that the ACT should be in negotiations with the New South Wales government, exactly as you said earlier. All these satellite suburbs are dotting up around outside the border. I think we should annex all the way out to Murrumbateman, all halfway up the Federal Highway, all of Queanbeyan, right? There would be no thought of land block. I mean, we'd have so much land that we could use it for the next 500 years. Is there a conversation happening with the New South Wales government on such a?
Well, it's not. To be honest, not that I know of. It does occasionally get mentioned. The only conversations that either have happened or are happening or should be happening are with regard to the Riverview Gin and Dairy development over in West Belconnen. but I think there are many questions there that are still to be answered. But otherwise, look, to be honest, I don't think there are any conversations happening in this space at the moment. It's potentially something that an ACT government could entertain, but I think it's highly unlikely the New South Wales government would entertain it. The best we could do is try to come to some better arrangement perhaps with the New South Wales government with regard to service delivery and try to get some better economies of scale for some of the things. That's certainly something that could be done sooner rather than later. But as for actually shifting the border, I think it's unlikely.
I can see that being a multiple terms of government.
That's right. We do have 4-year terms, so these things were meant to be able to be possible. Who knows?
All right. So one more question here, and then I think there's some online questions.
Thank you, Alistair. Okay. From your spill, I'm hearing a lot of tax cuts, rates, and reducing land values and everything, or maybe growing at a very, very slow rate. But on the other side, a lot of spending on improving Calvary and everything, all those things. All good. As a citizen of ACT, I'm happy with all those things. But how are you going to do it? So I'm very keen to know what are your policies on how are you going to reduce. You're going to freeze. You said you're going to freeze the rate for 3 years, and after that start raising again, right? And how are you going to do? What exactly are your policies?
Sure.
I'm going to vote another year, so I would like to know what your policies are, so I can make my decision on.
Sure. Well, look, I can assure you that by the time the decision point comes, there will be the full suite. But of course, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. There's 11 months of water to go under that bridge, in fact. So we're still to release all the policies. The frustrations of an opposition is that you're in opposition, but really, in a way, you actually only become an alternative government at the very end when you actually do have the final budget position and you actually are delivering all your policies in order to optimise your vote on that one day in October. So there's a lot more to come. Regarding the rates, the rates bills for households have gone up a lot. There's no doubt about that. But it's also worth noting that the rates bill for the residential rates for the government is still actually only a fraction. It's less than 10% of their total income. The majority of their income actually comes from the Commonwealth. And that's increasing at a very solid rate, the revenue from the Commonwealth. So to actually freeze residential rates will only cost, over the 4 years, will only cost 0.5% of our total revenue. 0.5%. Which is, yes.
In terms of my dollar value?
Yeah, it's about $150 million over 4 years, noting that the ACT in that same period will bring in, will have total revenue of about 28 billion. 28,000 millions. And we're talking about 150 million will be the cost of that freeze. However, I think there are social justice reasons why it has to be done. I think there are fairness issues. And so I believe it's got to be a priority of the government, and that's why we've committed to it.
All right, Alistair, over this way. We've got one online here from Natasha. It's more of a comment, but I'll give you a chance to respond. Mr. Coe, please bring back the school. Please bring the school buses back. The government refuses to listen to parents after so many requests. Our children are scared to use the regular buses.
Yeah, well, I think Natasha's probably on the money there. Look, I think there are a lot of people in Gungahlin, but across Canberra, that are pretty cranky with the school bus changes. I think there are also a lot of people who are cranky with the route bus changes. Obviously any network, will have some winners and some losers, but gee, there are a lot of losers when it comes to this last network. I think about just the number of people in Gungahlin now have a forced transfer to get to Belconnen. This idea that everybody needs to go and work in the city, I think is just crazy. There are a lot of people that work in Belconnen. A lot of people who move to Gungahlin because they work in Belconnen, and it's pretty easy to get there. So by cutting, the 51, 52, 54, 55, etc., the direct buses to Belconnen, I think, has had a pretty dramatic impact. And then, of course, the school buses. Many schools in the ACT have been affected. I know Good Shepherd up in Amaroo in particular has been very much adversely affected by it, and many others. So Yeah, I think the question is on the money, and they've got to be brought back. We've committed to it, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I mean, certainly our feedback is that buses between Gungahlin and Belconnen have been by far the worst impacted. And part of that, I would observe, is that the Gungahlin town centre is actually in the centre of Gungahlin. So if you're in a suburb like Casey or Crace, you're actually coming backwards to the town centre to catch a rapid route. Yeah. So something needs to. That model has not worked well for that particular route, and that's certainly something we've flagged explicitly and hope to have addressed in the fullness of time. One of the unexpectedly positive outcomes of the current changes in public transport is the rapid uptake of light rail, to the point where a lot of people are now saying we need more light rail on the existing line. Do you see that as a priority for a Liberal government to make sure that the light rail is actually able to meet the demand that's being applied from Gungahlin?
Yeah, well, the projections are, of course, around 15,000 people a day using it. So obviously you've got 7,500 return journeys, with the vast majority of those morning peak and afternoon peak. So when you've got 12 services between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, they're going to be busy. There's no doubt about that. Just like the 200 series were busy, just like the 202 direct bus was very popular and very busy. They're busy. The challenge is, obviously, you put on another light rail service that is not used during the day. So from an asset maximisation or optimisation level, these are all trade-offs you've got to make. But look, I'm not at all surprised that the tram's popular in the mornings and the afternoons. It's the only option. And for a lot of people, especially if you live within walking distance and you work within walking distance, it works well for you. But yeah, the idea of another couple of trams, I think it's feasible. But maybe there is some short-term solutions might be for people, for instance, in Crace and Palmerston, to have some direct buses to the city. That'd be a way of addressing that, so they didn't have to go up north. There are all sorts of ways and means of addressing this in the short term, rather than just say you've got to wait 3 trams to get on a service at 8:30.
More questions? Yep, yeah, just here and over there.
Yeah. So what's your plan for monitoring the quality of these dwellings, high-rise buildings, like we have seen some pretty bad issues in Sydney, so it may happen here as well. Yeah, well, there are at least a couple of examples here in Canberra. There's no doubt about that. Look, I think it is a major shortcoming of governments, but here in the ACT as well. If you're going to make the biggest purchase of your life, and it's going to have a government stamp to say that it's up to standard, I think you're pretty entitled to be let down if that stamp is pretty much worthless. So some people have said to me, the answer is going to be just to go back to having no more private certifiers and just have government certifiers. I can understand that, but if suddenly you put 50 people out of work who are private certifiers and say we're now going to employ 50 certifiers in the public sector, guess where the 50 certifiers are going to come from? Surely it's a system issue that needs to be addressed. And so just a second, I think we've got to make sure that there are more inspection points. Absolutely. I think there's a lot that can be done with regard to the sharing of data during the construction phase, and pretty much improving the transparency during the construction phase, and even just some simple things like, why don't we have a public database which says what buildings that builder has built before? Why can't you click on that building licence and see all the structures that have been built by that builder, and you can actually see whether they're any good or not? There are lots of ways, some very practical things that can be done. The government's got wheels in motion at the moment, but there's obviously an issue. But I do want to put the caveat that there are also a lot of good builders in Canberra. And there are a lot of very good structures in Canberra as well. And we've just got to be careful that we don't create almost a sovereign risk issue here by tainting all buildings and all structures and all property in the ACT, because there are a lot of high quality buildings in the ACT, and I think we just need to make sure that buyers are as well informed as possible.
I've got a question here. I'll come back to you, sir.
Hi. Thank you for coming. My question is actually about public housing. I've done a lot of volunteer work in Canberra over the years, and I've also worked at one stage in public housing in New South Wales. When I lived in Sydney as a child, I didn't know which houses in my area were public housing dwellings and which houses were the dwellings of people living nearby. This then meant that the children all went to school together and there was no discrimination because nobody knew. It was just part of the colour and fabric of where we lived. Here in the ACT, there are areas of great sadness and loss. There are children who are going to school here who feel afraid to go to school. I find it absolutely abysmal that some of the houses, some of the dwellings that I've seen in the ACT are the most appallingly kept places that I have ever seen. And I worked in Sydney at one stage where 84% of the public houses, 84% of the people there lived in public housing. So when I say those conditions were bad, believe me, they were very bad. We can do better than this. And not only can we do better than this, but we have a lot of aging stock out there that isn't being accommodated correctly, and there are no plans to put together a salt and pepper approach that, you know, they say they're doing it, but they're not, throughout the community, so that children have an opportunity to grow up in it equally.
Yeah, and look, growing up in Canberra, I was born here. It was pretty much as you said. You know, you couldn't say, you know, which house was the public housing property and which house wasn't. Now the government claims they've got a salt and pepper policy, and that may be so if you look at a suburb in its entirety. But when you actually zoom in, there is, you know, a particular property that has 22 units in it, and every single one is a public housing property. So whilst the whole map of the suburb that says, you know, that there is 95% private dwellings and 5% public housing might suggest it's a salt and pepper approach, in reality there is a cluster, and that pretty much can create all sorts of social issues, because often there are people in social housing that have particular needs, but also it just means that you're potentially stigmatising everybody in those properties, and especially for kids, that's pretty traumatising stuff. So further to that, you know, the cost of these dwellings are very, very expensive. Like, I'm staggered by some of the costs of construction of some of these dwellings. And I think there's one in Western Creek, and you know, I may be wrong here, so I'm sure I'll get hounded down online if I'm not, but I think it's something like $750,000 to $800,000 per unit construction cost for some of these, and it's just massive, massive money. It just shouldn't be that way. So I think we're doing a real disservice by potentially stigmatising, you know, generations of people. And I think you're right. I think we can do better, and it shouldn't just be a lazy approach, which is just here's a block of land, it's a community zone land, we can go and put umpteen units on there and tick the box. They deserve better than that.
Further to that, so what's the solution? You know, what would, you know, if you were to come to government, how would you address that?
Well, the solution, you know, obviously there was some medium and high density structures that were built in the 60s primarily, but also in the 70s. Many of those, if not all of them, have been brought down because they didn't work. You know, we're talking at Melba, or you're talking about the ones down in Lyons, or the ones in the city. The government says that the magical number, I think, is about 20 units, and I don't quite follow that. I know that there will be some complexes where if you do have people with similar needs, there will be some efficiencies in service delivery. But really, I think they should be few and far between rather than being the norm. The answer is to do what governments did in the ACT for decades, and that was spot purchase houses throughout suburbs. And if you actually went through some of the older suburbs, you went through the Kayleens and Girlangs and Everts, etc. Firstly, the government doesn't publish where the houses are, and that's a good thing. But if you did, I bet you it would be a genuine salt and pepper with just dots all over that map, which is, I think, much fairer than having a cluster of 20 or 25 that, we all know has issues. Or has potential to have issues, I should say.
Hi, just to continue this conversation, I think the planning policy, I was in LDA in the early 2000s and was very involved in planning, and the planning policy now also is to go towards these clusters, and they've gone to the extent of even giving it a color code which stigmatizes it further. So that's another story. But I think the thought process behind getting them into clusters near neighborhood markets, like what they've done in Amaru or what they've done in Anuwal, is so that these people living here have immediate access to shopping, proximity to services.
And that's a good. There are good benefits to that, but there are also times where they're not near amenities. There are many times where they're not near amenities. Yeah. And that's where they're not getting the benefits of being within walking distance, etc. So it's not to say that every complex is bad. It's not to say that every complex has problems. I just don't think we're necessarily putting the odds in our favour by that planning approach.
Earlier one, there was just one other thing. We were talking about quality of construction in ACT, and I've been involved in quality assurance for infrastructure projects a long time in ACT. And I even made the suggestion about private certification. There's a conflict of interest because the certifier is hired by the builder. The builder pays the certifier his fees. So you can't expect the certifier to not, I wouldn't say he won't look the other way, but at least he could wink, So he won't, obviously. The builder's giving him his money. The builder's paying his fees. And he gets references from the builder. Like, for example, if I'm a builder, I have a certifier, and I tell the other builder, this guy's a cool bloke, he won't trouble you, take him. And he likes that, and he takes his fees from him. So this system, I made it clear very early on, and it doesn't work. But
well, look, I do think that the vast majority of certifiers are more honourable than that, I reckon. But look, there potentially are some issues. I think before you go the nuclear approach, which is to get rid of them, I think there are some very practical things that we could do right away, and then to assess how they're going before going the whole hog. There's a reason why private certifiers were brought in, because it's not to say that when there are only government certifiers that everything's perfect as well. There were problems before as well. So we just got to make sure that we're just taking just good, solid, evidence-based approach to this. But obviously the current arrangement's not working.
I know there's one or two more questions out there, but I'm conscious that we're well over time. I sort of make a point of trying to be finished up by 8:30. If anyone has a burning question, I will take it, but we'll try and make the last one. Okay, burning? Yeah. Okay, burning. All right.
This is just a very quick one. With regard to public housing tenants, sometimes they want to buy property. I've heard cases where they've asked housing and it comes in at market value. Can you see any benefit in people in that situation being offered a property 20% under market value? The ACT government will still make a profit on the property. They'll be losing somebody they have to support. The 20% would give them an ability to borrow from a bank, and then that money can be used to support somebody else who doesn't have housing.
Yeah. I think the concept is a very interesting one. Obviously, Margaret Thatcher in the UK explored this extensively and brought in massive reforms to buy your own council house in the UK that brought tens, if not hundreds of thousands of families into the property market for the first time. There are issues with it. The ACT government currently does have a joint equity scheme where somebody who is in a public housing property can start to buy more equity into the property, but it's very, very underutilised. There's hardly anybody who has taken up that scheme for many reasons, and you can sometimes have some perverse incentives, in that if you're there making improvements and you're driving up the value of that property, that can be problematic. Also, you know, the last thing you want is to have any interest in devaluing the property. So there are just all sorts of complications with it. But as a concept, anything that can help people in a path to financial security, which often comes through home ownership, I think as a concept is worth pursuing. But the model's just got to be absolutely spot on, that creates the right incentives and the right level of equity and fairness. But there's got to be a way of achieving something along those lines. Yeah, well, that's right. Interesting point you should mention, because that's something else, one of the sleeper issues of these high land prices in the ACT. Because when you go and buy a block of land for $450,000 and it's a 400 square metre block, your unimproved land value is then $450,000, meaning you've got huge rates on the back of that top dollar. So you not only you're out of pocket a lot up front, but you've got this massive legacy issue in terms of the high unimproved value. So, and you actually see this, you know, not wanting to draw the revenue officer's attention to it, but you see this, you know, with issues with valuations in Throsby as opposed to over the highway, over Horse Park Drive into Harrison. You've got some very unusual land values there, sometimes much smaller blocks as well, that are higher values. So there's all sorts of problems with the average, with the land prices going up at the rate that they have been.
All right, I'm conscious of time, so I am going to wrap it up. And it's a good point to end on land values. You mentioned the family bought into 900 square metres for $87,000. Well, I got ripped off. My block cost me $85,000. I got 800 square metres, but it was 96. So thank you, Alistair, for coming in. Yeah. We really appreciate it. Yeah. I hope you've got value out of the feedback, and hope to see you again before October next year. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Next month is the annual general meeting for the Community Council. That won't take a lot of time, but if you are interested in getting involved, this is your chance to do that. Failing that, thank you. Good night.